A very good evening to one and all. I welcome you all to this newspaper analysis initiative. These are the articles that are important from the UPSC perspective. Without any further delay, let's begin with the first one. Today's important constitutional issue is about the NJAC versus Collegium debate. Chief Justice of India said the Supreme Court may consider a plea asking to revive the NJAC and to end the Collegium system. The CJI has only said the court will consider taking up the matter. This is not reopening the case yet, but it's a significant development given the long standing debate on judicial appointments. So, what is needed from the UPSC perspective? First, we will look into the background of this NJAC. Okay. Parliament passed the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act to replace the Collegium system. Along with it, the NJAC Act 2014 was passed. They created a new body called National Judicial Appointments Commission NJAC for appointing judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts. So, what did NJAC propose? Actually, it inserted Article 124A, that is, which specifies the composition of NJAC. The NJAC had 6 members, Chief Justice of India as chairperson, 2 senior-most Supreme Court judges, law minister, 2 eminent persons chosen by a committee of Prime Minister, Chief Justice of India and leader of opposition. The one eminent person must be from SC or ST or OBC or minority or women, and the tenure is for 3 years and there is no reappointment. It also included another Article 124B which specifies the functions of NJAC. That is, it will recommend appointments of CJI, Supreme Court judges and High Court judges, and it will also recommend transfers of judges while ensuring candidates have ability as well as integrity. It also added Article 124C which specifies the Parliament's power. That is, Parliament could make laws to decide procedures for appointment, and it will empower NJAC to frame its own regulations. Then, why was NJAC struck down? In Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India 2015 case, Supreme Court struck down the 99th Amendment and NJAC Act as unconstitutional in a 4:1 majority. The reason cited was it violated the basic structure, especially the independence of judiciary and judicial primacy in appointments. Now we will look into the constitutionality of NJAC. The Supreme Court clarified that it is unconstitutional because it violates the basic structure of the Constitution, which is independence of judiciary. It specified that NJAC allowed 2 eminent persons who didn't need any legal background. So, the government could technically nominate anybody, creating a risk of non-experts deciding judicial appointments. The act used unclear terms. For example, the senior most judge could be appointed CJI only if considered fit. But what is fitness? The law doesn't define it. This opens the door to discretion. Any 2 members could veto a candidate. So, judicial primacy could be overturned easily by a small minority, even non-judges. Next, the NJAC had 6 members, an even number, but the CJI didn't get a casting vote. So, if there is a 3-3 split, there is a deadlock. The chairperson had no power to break the tie. And the last one is NJAC could frame regulations, but Parliament could overturn those regulations. This gave the executive and legislature an upper hand over judicial appointments, and this threatens the judicial independence. So we will take some global models to understand where India actually stands. The first one is UK. The UK has come up with Constitutional Reforms Act 2005, through which judicial appointments are made by Judicial Appointments Commission. These bodies have members from judiciary and executive. The process is transparent and structured. The next example is from South Africa, where they have Judicial Service Commission. This commission advises the president on judicial appointments. They have a diverse membership like judges, ministers, lawyers, and MPs. This mix of institutions ensures the checks and balances. Okay, so what should be the way forward? We have to rework the NJAC and not reject this idea, because we need to remove the problems like veto power, unclear membership criteria, lack of casting vote, and we have to bring in transparency and safeguards. The second one, we have to finalize the memorandum of procedure. That is, government and judiciary must agree on a modern, transparent memorandum with clear criteria, eligibility norms, and complaint mechanism, etc. Third one, we have to increase transparency in the Collegium. That is, Collegium should reveal the reasons for selection as well as rejection. The Law Commission 230th report said judges should not be appointed to a high court where their close relatives are practicing. Okay. Next, we have to consider this All India Judicial Services, because to improve lower judiciary and to create a merit based national pool, All India Judicial Services should be introduced, and this has to be done only after wide consultation. The fifth one, we have to create an independent secretariat. That is, we need a full time judicial appointment secretariat, and they have to have a database of candidates and information of vacancies and research support, because this is very much essential to speed up the appointments and reduce vacancy crisis. The next article for the day is Supreme Court asks if a foreigner can be allowed to use Aadhaar to gain entry into poll roll. The Election Commission's special intensive revision of electorals has been challenged before the Supreme Court for being exclusionary and for shifting the burden of citizenship verification onto voters. The court has questioned the use of Aadhaar in this process, raising concerns about constitutional rights and the integrity of the voter list. Now we will look into this matter. The first one is Aadhaar versus citizenship. The Supreme Court observed that Aadhaar is an identity document and not proof of citizenship, because foreign nationals residing in India may legally obtain Aadhaar for welfare purposes. Hence, Aadhaar cannot be the basis for automatic inclusion in electoral rolls, because Article 326 of the Constitution and Section 16 RPA 1915 requires citizenship. Second, the risk of wrongful inclusion and exclusion. That is, the court highlighted the risk that non citizens may misuse Aadhaar to enter the voter list, but millions of poor or illiterate voters may be excluded if this process is rushed, and also it requires complicated documentation process. So this may amount to denial of the constitutional right to vote, which violates the principles of fairness and non-arbitrariness under Article 14. Now the third one is administrative concerns. That is, petitioners said that this SIR is a citizenship screening exercise in disguise. That is, which goes beyond the Election Commission's mandate, because excessive powers were given to the booth level officers. That is, it is like kind of judging citizenship. So this raises concerns of subjectivity, discrimination, and biasness. Okay. The next one is Election Commission's constitutional mandate versus procedural fairness. The court said that Election Commission has inherent powers under Section 21 of the Representation of the People Act to revise and verify rolls. However, such power must be exercised reasonably, transparently, and non exclusionary, maintaining the trust in this electoral process. The fifth one is data integrity, because electoral roll purity, that is preventing non-citizen entry into electoral rolls, and electoral inclusion, that is protecting vulnerable and legitimate voters, which is very very important. And Aadhaar, which is designed primarily for welfare portability, cannot be served as a conclusive citizenship tool. The Supreme Court's intervention in this matter underscores that electoral rights cannot be compromised by hasty or exclusionary administrative processes. And the next article for the day is a 3.5 billion years old crater in Mars has been named as MS Krishnan. Okay, now we have to look into this International Astronomical Union. It is a professional astronomy body, or the International Association of Universities. Okay, and this is to promote and safeguard astronomy in all its aspects, including research, communication, education, and development. This is the sole authority that sets rules for naming celestial bodies using systematic designations and sometimes using proper names. Okay, that is what you should be knowing from this article. Okay, the next article for the day is passive euthanasia. Today, the Supreme Court dealt with the sensitive issue passive euthanasia. This came up in a case where a 31-year-old man has been in a vegetative state for over 10 years, and his father requested that a life support be withdrawn. Now, what is passive euthanasia? Passive euthanasia means allowing a person to die by stopping life support. Okay, India legally allows passive euthanasia following the 2018 Supreme Court judgment in Common Cause versus Union of India. Okay, and this case also recognized living wills. Now, what this case said is they will set up a primary medical board to examine the patient's medical condition, and they will also look into whether life sustaining treatment can be ethically and medically withdrawn. Okay, now why is this important for UPSC? Because it can be asked with respect to GS2 first, and it can also be used in general studies, ethics, also in case studies. Now we will look into this right to die with dignity in detail. Now, the right to die with dignity refers to the idea that a terminally ill person should be able to make decisions about their end of life care, including choosing not to prolong suffering. Okay, there is two types of euthanasia: active euthanasia and passive euthanasia. Active euthanasia means administering something to cause a death, which is illegal, whereas passive euthanasia means withdrawing the life support. Okay, this is illegal under the SC Supreme Court rulings. Now, the legal status is the first case is Aruna Shanbag case in 2011, where Supreme Court allowed passive euthanasia for the first time. The second one is Common Cause versus Union of India. In this, the Supreme Court told that Article 21 includes right to die with dignity, and it legalized passive euthanasia and recognized living wills and prescribed detailed safeguards. Now we will look into the stakeholders and the ethical issues associated with it. The first one is the patients and the families, because patients endure severe pain and they lose their dignity and go through emotional trauma, and families also face emotional guilt and heavy financial burden. Now, the second one is healthcare providers, because they are bound by the Hippocratic oath, that is to do no harm. So there is a moral conflict between saving life and respecting autonomy. Now, the third one is the state and the policy makers. They have to balance the autonomy while preventing the misuse of this. And it is the duty of the state to protect the vulnerable groups. The fourth stakeholder is the society, that is who values the sanctity of life. Now, what are the arguments for a right to die with dignity? The first one is it enhances the quality of life, because life with unbearable suffering or a total loss of function may be worse than death itself. The second one is it is respecting the autonomy, because competent individuals should choose how they want to live and die. The third one is principle of double effect. That is, doctors may relieve a pain even if it hastens a death. The fourth one is justice as well as compassion. This avoids unnecessary prolongation of agony that the patient is going through, and it also reduces the emotional and financial burden of the families. Now, what are the arguments against right to die with dignity? The first one is the sanctity of life, because life itself is intrinsically valuable. The second one is the constitutional morality, because freedom of religion or choice cannot misuse Article 21's guarantee of life. The third one is palliative care potential, because with recent advancement in healthcare, we can relieve suffering without euthanasia. So, incurable diseases of today may be treatable tomorrow. The fourth one is non maleficence and Hippocratic oath that was taken by the healthcare providers. That is, doctors must not intentionally cause death. The fifth one is the Kantian ethics, because life has intrinsic worth and ending it violates the universal duties. The sixth one is there is a potential for misuse, like pressuring the vulnerable patients or for inheritance purposes, pushing for convenient euthanasia. So, what will be the way forward? The first one is strong regulatory framework should be there, and this passive euthanasia should be done only in accredited hospitals with the approval by multiple medical boards. The second one is we can provide safeguards against misuse by providing a psychological assessment, mandatory counseling, and having a cooling off period. This will help us in ensuring whether the person is coerced or not. The third one is we need to have a transparent procedures. That is, we need to lay down clear guidelines in a law. The next article for the day is limited room, why the rupee is falling and what India must do. Okay, let's keep this very simple, because already we have seen this in detail in the past two classes. So we will look into the points that we haven't covered in the previous sessions. Okay, here it shows that Reserve Bank of India is trying to manage the situation by selling $50 billion in forex to slow the rupee's fall, and they also conducted a $10 billion rupee currency swap, mainly to boost rupee liquidity. Okay, now the problem is India's current account deficit is also widening, majorly because of gold imports and US tariffs. Now the good news is forex reserves are healthy at $693 billion and inflation is also extremely low. But there is a bigger structural issue. This should be noted, because India's heavy dependence on oil imports, that is, crude alone is around 20% of our import bill. When the rupee weakens, and then oil becomes more costlier and inflation risks rise again. So, this article says that we need to have a strategic long term fixes. We need to push for transport electrification and reduce oil dependence, and we must also shift from random bilateral trade deals to a long term trade strategy. Okay, the next article for the day is INO and Juno. What is INO? It is India based neutrino observatory which is planned in Thaini, Tamil Nadu. It is a 50 kiloton underground detector to study neutrinos. Okay, and it required an underground lab inside a mountain. Why this was stalled means majorly because of the environmental concerns and fears about radiation, tunneling and blasting of rocks. And there was also poor public engagement and miscommunication, and rumors were also spread. Political opposition also came for this project using the local mobilization of people, and there were also some procedural lapses in this project clearance, especially environmental impact assessment. All these were in news. What is Juno? It is China's Jiangmen underground neutrino observatory, and which is completed, and it is one of the world's largest neutrino detectors, and it has also started publishing results. Now, why does this matter? Because INO and Juno had same scientific goals. Now, China has progressed rapidly, whereas India lost a chance to contribute to the major scientific breakthrough. What are the lessons that we can learn? This is what this article is talking. The first one is scientific readiness must be matched with governance readiness. Major scientific projects fail not because of weak science but because of governance systems. Governance readiness means having social, administrative, legal, and environmental systems aligned with this scientific ambition. Okay, the next one is proactive community engagement should be preceded before large projects, because large science projects like INO, nuclear reactors impact land, livelihoods, ecology, and local identity. Communities those are present there often resist when projects appear suddenly without any dialogues. In the INO case, local people feared radiation, mining, and water impact, mostly due to misinformation and lack of early consultation. Next, governance readiness requires yearly social impact assessments should be done. Also, village level consultations and multilingual and regional language awareness campaigns should be held. And we have to involve local leaders as stakeholders in this. Okay, when people feel respected and informed, scientific projects automatically gain legitimacy. Next, transparent regulatory process and environmental assessments are very much essential. Large scale scientific infrastructure must undergo yearly environmental impact assessments, wildlife clearances, and groundwater studies, and these processes should be transparent, time bound, and free from bureaucratic ambiguity. Okay, this will reduce litigations, public suspicions, and any political manipulations. The third one is we need stable long term funding and interagency collaboration, because projects like INO require cooperation between Department of Atomic Energy, state governments, environmental agencies, as well as international collaborators. If funding is erratic or interdepartmental coordination is weak, this will lead to time and cost overrun. So, the core message of this article is scientific excellence alone cannot deliver national scientific breakthroughs. Rather, we must ensure social acceptance, transparent regulation, financial stability, and administrative coordination. The next article for the day is Constitution is document of our national pride. This was told by our president. So what you can take from this article is you can use this statement as your introduction when you write your mains answers. That is, Constitution is not just a legal document but a symbol of national identity and national pride. This was told by our president. Okay, so this is the statement that you can use. The next one is from Prime Minister's speech. He told that this Constitution Day coincides with the 150th birth anniversary of Sardar Vallabhai Patel and 150 years of Vande Mataram and 350th martyrdom of Guru Tegh Bahadur. So all these three things becomes very important from prelims perspective. So we have to be thorough about this. The next article for the day is what's happening with India and Canada. Right now, both the countries are close to sealing a big uranium supply deal, which is around $2.8 billion for a long term fuel supply, mainly to India's nuclear reactors. Now, why is this important? Because India's nuclear power plants, especially our pressurized heavy water reactors, run better when we have steady uranium imports. Our domestic uranium is limited, so these deals are crucial for our energy security. Okay, now we will look into the 2008 Indo-US Civil Nuclear Agreement. Okay, because of this agreement, India got a historic nuclear suppliers group waiver, which allows us to buy nuclear fuel from global markets, even though we haven't signed the non proliferation treaty. Before 2008, countries like Canada were not allowed to sell uranium to India. Okay, now we will look into India Canada nuclear ties. Canada actually signed a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with us in 2010 and it became operational in 2013. One thing to note is Canada is one of the world's top uranium producers and they are a very good long term partner for India. Okay. So, why does this deal matter for India? Because this will strengthen our nuclear energy security and it will help our reactors run at full capacity. Okay, and it will support our clean energy targets that we aspire to achieve for, and it will also diversify our uranium sources beyond countries like Australia and Kazakhstan. Overall, this is a strategic and energy security. The next article for the day is National Judicial Policy. Chief Justice of India recently emphasized the need for a uniform national judicial policy to minimize unpredictability and conflicting interpretations across the Supreme Court benches and 25 high courts. Okay, he argued that judicial outcomes should reflect a harmonized constitutional vision rather than a fragmented approaches. Now we will look into details of this. So, why a national judicial policy is needed? India's multi-tier judiciary often gives multiple interpretations on similar legal questions, and this creates a legal inconsistency because predictability is essential for rule of law as well as public trust. Now, what is the objectives of the policy? The major objective is to ensure coherence and uniformity in judicial reasoning, and this will provide clear guidance on questions of law. It will also reduce delays caused by the contradictory judgments, and litigations will also be reduced, and this will also strengthen the constitutional ethos across the courts. So, the suggested solutions are we have to augment the judicial infrastructure, that is, more courts and better facilities. The second one is we have to promote mediation or alternative dispute resolution as a cost effective and humane mode of dispute resolution should also be promoted. Okay, and we must also encourage procedural uniformity and capacity building across courts. And the next article is regarding the Goa Tiger Reserve. We have seen this article in detail in our previous class, so we will skip this. And the next article for the day is online money gaming. Okay, online money gaming has exploded in India in the last few years, especially after COVID. Okay, now the government told the Supreme Court that this is not just entertainment because it is becoming a major risk to people and even to national security, and that's why the new online gaming regulation act was brought. So the debate is, can something be called a trade under article 19 if it is harming human lives? Okay, Now, why the government stepped in the first place? The government says almost 45 crore Indians have been badly affected due to these money games, and people are also losing savings, and young people are also getting addicted, and there are even suicide cases. Okay, and they say that around rupees 2000 crore losses have been found out. Okay, so this cannot be treated like a normal business. The second one is the economy and the economic and the security concerns. The center told that online gaming is not just a social issue, there's a huge security angle to it. There's tax evasion, money laundering, and cross border fund flows. Banks have even detected money mule accounts linked to these gaming sites, and because the money moves in a unregulated ways, it can even be misused for terror funding. So it's not just a small problem, it's a big systemic risk. The third one is the constitutional angle. The company says we have a fundamental right to trade. The government says yes, but Article 19 is not absolute. You cannot run a business that puts human lives in danger. So, Articles 19 allows reasonable restrictions, especially when public health and safety are at stake. The fourth one is cybercrime and data safety issues, because identity theft is common, because people interact with strangers, and these apps can also have spyware, viruses, and hackers. So it's not just the money loss, even personal data and privacy are under threat. So, why the act was needed means the government says the act will help regulate these games properly. This will help in verifying users, stop illegal apps, monitor the financial flows, and also reduce addiction. The idea here is not to ban gaming, but to make it safe and transparent. And the next article for the day is India's cabinet has approved rupees 7,280 crore scheme to develop an integrated manufacturing ecosystem for rare earth permanent magnets. Okay, so this marks India's first structured push to reduce import dependence in a sector which is dominated by China. So, why the scheme was needed in the first place? India imports almost 100% of its rare earth permanent magnet needs mainly from China, and these are very much essential for EV motors, wind turbines, drones, radars, and missiles. And growing EV and renewable capacity also requires a secure domestic supply chain. Okay, so, what are the key features of the scheme? The total outlay is around 7,000 crore, out of which sales linked incentives have been provided, and 750 crores have been given for capital subsidy. The major aim is to boost domestic capacity. Okay. So, what are the expected benefits out of the scheme? The first one is strategic autonomy in critical technologies, and this will reduce the import dependence, especially on China. And this will also strengthen India's EV, renewable energy, aerospace, and particularly defense ecosystem. This will also support India's participation in global critical minerals supply chain. The next article for the day is Chief Election Commissioner will assume charge as the chairperson of International IDEA for 2026. Okay, what is this IDEA? It is International Institution for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. This is an intergovernmental organization which is particularly dedicated to strengthen the democratic institutions, supporting free and fair elections, promoting political participation, and building sustainable and legitimate democracy. This is the mandate for this organization. Now, the facts that are essential from prelims perspective are it is headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden, and India is a founding member of this international idea. That is important. Okay, we come to the last article of the day, which is very interesting one. That is, modern Wi-Fi signals can actually recognize who you are just from your walking style, and this was told in this article. This happens because your phone sends out a beam forming feedback. Okay, beam forming feedback. These are nothing but small reports sent to your Wi-Fi routers. These signals are unencrypted. That's the catch. So, any nearby device can listen to them. And researchers showed that this alone can identify over 160 people with almost 100% accuracy. And the scary part is you don't need the Wi Fi password or any hacking mechanisms. Okay, it is a silent surveillance. And this raises big privacy questions, especially under the right to privacy. That's all for today. Thank you all for joining.